Be very clear about your intentions, what you want to accomplish. You have to let other people know what you're trying to achieve, or you aren't going to get their help to try to achieve it. There's real power in that. Once I kind of learned that little magic tool, it made a big transformation in my career.
Ken Lyman, welcome to the DJ Seelitz Business Podcast.
Well, thank you.
It's good to have you.
It's an honor to be here.
It's an honor?
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, Charlie, I've actually listened to some of your podcasts ahead of this, and I'd like to pay you a compliment. I listened to the Brad Nilsson podcast, and I thought it was outstanding. The information that was shared there, super valuable, and I thought it was a credit to you to have this entrepreneurial idea that you would go out and create a podcast. But on top of that, I thought you were very good at it. You ask a lot of really relevant questions that drew out the person that you were interviewing, and I think you've got a talent for it.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate that.
Sure.
It's always fun to do it. I think I told you, but I don't do a lot of work. Yeah, I know what questions to ask, but you're the one talking. So it's not a lot of me talking, which is cool. So yeah, the DJ Seelitz Business Podcast, the reason I want to start this is to help people get more out of life, help them have a better mindset. Mindset, the book of the week. This is actually your copy. You lent this to me and I'm working on reading it right now. Great book, but we're going to talk a lot about mindset today. And then also just to help people with their career or business, be more successful at that. And then with all those combined, just get more out of life, have a better quality of life. So, Ken, tell us a little bit about yourself. You have like a background education where you went to college, got a business degree and then master's degree. So I'm curious, how much did that have to do with the career path you took and then kind of what your experience was? Just kind of overlooking, what was your experience with college and your career?
Okay, so I went to BYU and I got an undergraduate in business with a minor in economics, and then I continued my education at Utah State University and got a master's degree in human resource management. Mm-hmm. And then I went into higher education. So really a lot of my career is tied to higher education. I took a job at a little community college in southeastern Utah, College of San Juan campus of College of Eastern Utah, and worked in their financial aid office, which really became kind of the basis of my skill set, my marketable skill set. I worked there for a little less than a year, but it kind of launched my career in that direction. And I think that that's a lot of how people's careers go, is that they go to some higher education institution, which helps give them a start somewhere, and then they'll get that first job, and then that first job helps build a marketable skill set, which then sends them off on a particular career path. And that's exactly what happened with me. I worked in higher education for about 5 years, all of it financial aid related, and then I went to work for a vendor of higher education that was building a brand new higher education product, PeopleSoft. Was there for 8 years. That company was acquired. Then I spent another 10 years or so at the acquiring company, Oracle, working in their higher education product line principally. I did do some other things along the way. And then that led me to go to another vendor, which also does higher education software. So that's essentially my career path.
Cool. So you talked about in college, and once your job out of college, you kind of found your skill set, your marketable skill set. How much of that and how much of your career did you know you were going to be good at before college and just kind of growing up? Or when did you kind of find, I'm pretty good at this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'm a pretty typical person. Growing up, I had different ideas, some of which were given to me by my parents on, what I was good at or what they thought I would be good at. College for me was kind of an experimental time where I, typical traditional 4-year undergraduate where you have to take general education, and so I got to experiment with different types of things. Took a variety of humanity classes, took a variety of science classes, math classes, all those types of things, which helped me gauge not only my abilities, but also helped gauge my interests, find out the things that I was good at. I honestly, when I left my undergraduate degree, I wasn't even sure then, what I wanted to be when I grew up. I did know that I had certain interests. I did know. I really liked my college experience.
Yeah.
It was a great fit for me. All of the classes that I took, I just felt kind of honored to be listening to people who had such great, deep knowledge in those particular topics, and I really dove into college, and I loved almost every class I took. I didn't have really any bad experiences at all. But when I came out of school, I had a business undergraduate, which gets you started in a lot of different types of jobs, and I just kind of randomly landed in the job that I landed in. That was the one that showed up on a advertisement, and I applied for it and got the job. So I didn't really have a direction that was planned out, A to B. I just kind of took the opportunities as they were put in front of me, and it led to the career that I ended up going into.
Interesting. So with your career and all the things you've been involved in, what are some big lessons you've learned from either what you've been involved in directly or from what you've observed with people around you in the businesses you've been part of?
One thing I think is it helps to kind of know yourself. There's different types of career paths that you can take that lead to very different type lifestyles. And I think it's really helpful to know kind of what gives you satisfaction, what will make you happy, and also what is going to make you unhappy. I'll give you an example from my younger brother, who was very successful in school. He always did very well, graduated top of his class.
Is this Mark?
Yeah, my brother Mark. Yeah.
Wow. Darn Mark.
Yeah. He's always been really successful in school, and that led to him becoming a doctor, and he used the Air Force to help him pay for that. And then he became a pathologist. While he was in medical school, he kind of had to make a decision of what kind of specialty that he was going to go into. And medicine's pretty broad in terms of the types of things that you can do.
Right.
And I think he started out with psychiatry. It was kind of his primary interest. But then as he thought about it more, he thought, that's not the kind of doctor I want to be, mostly because of the lifestyle. He saw himself having to interact with people on a regular basis that that needed serious help,
right.
And that felt stressful to him. And so he ended up going into pathology, which pathology is more lab work, right? Or running a big lab, and the people interaction stuff, or client interaction stuff is not that high. And he just kind of knew that about himself. And so he went with pathology, and it was a great fit for him. He had to do service in the Air Force, so he was there for a number of years doing that. And then when it came time to re-up, he had an opportunity to either go out into private practice, or he could stay with the Air Force, and he chose to stay with the Air Force. And a lot of that had to do with because he likes the Air Force lifestyle. He likes, I think he likes the military as a whole, but I also think that they get 6 weeks of vacation every year, which he really enjoyed. I don't think the pace of work in government type thing is what it would be out in industry. And so, I think he viewed that as a positive as well. And I think he's been super satisfied in his career. And a big part of that is he knew himself. He knew the kinds of things that fit him. And I think that's been true for me as well, that when I was in higher education, it was too slow for me. I didn't like it. I just wasn't engaged enough on a day-to-day basis with the work I was doing. And when I went to a vendor who sold higher education, a software vendor, the pace was much faster. And the learning curve was high, and the change of things that we had to keep up to date on were very high. And I enjoyed that a lot. And I think it's kept me in that industry because we're constantly having to refresh our skill sets to stay relevant in the market. And so I like that a lot. So I think that's one thing that you need to think about is you need to kind of evaluate what are the things that are important to you as you make your decisions along the way.
Totally. Yeah, so that's just self-awareness.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's super important. It's just called the business podcast, but like business and career. For example, I think a lot of people think they need to be an entrepreneur or start this business, but that's not for everyone. That's probably like my personality, where I want to do these big, unreasonable goals and do it with, interesting people and build and have a lot of years where we haven't found a lot of success, but the payout at the end is awesome. But for a lot of people, a more normal, job working for someone else might be the better route based on what's important to them.
Yeah. I also I like working for a large corporation. There's a lot of benefits to that. Large corporations have a lot of stability to them for the most part. That's why they became large, because they've got a good business model. Mm-hmm. And large corporations tend to pay good benefits. So you've got a large family, and you need to have good health insurance and retirement programs and those kinds of things. That tends to happen a lot less in small business, right? Small business startups, you're kind of on your own for all of that stuff. When you go work for a large corporation, that's kind of all set up for you. So there's benefits to working for a large corporation. Another thing I like about large corporation is there are lots of opportunities, lots of different types of jobs that are within a large corporation, and I have changed job roles 4 or 5 times throughout my career, and I really enjoy that, being able to go do something new that's already kind of set up for you,
Yeah. Well, just recently you kind of changed your career focus, but in the same company, right?
Yeah, I've done that several times. I've worked, so I'm in software, I've worked in consulting, I've worked in support, I've worked in product, and I've most recently moved to a strategy role. So and that's a pretty big scope in terms of skill set, new things I've had to learn along the way in all of those things. And working, in kind of a narrowly focused thing, like let's say I was a plumber, I'm not going to be able to do all of those different types of job roles in my career. Not to put down plumbers, I think that's great, but it's just in a large corporation you have all of these different opportunities. The other thing is, cream tends to rise to the top, is what I found. But it can only rise so far in certain structures, right? In a big corporation, if you're the top of your class, you can keep growing, and really the sky's the limit in how far you can go. Well, I guess not the sky's the limit, CEO would be as high as you could go. But, if you've got those capabilities, you can reach those levels in a large corporation. So I like that about big companies.
Along with the other things you've observed from the companies and people around you and in your experience, what are some traits, habits, and just these characteristics you see in successful people and also successful businesses?
So one of the characteristics or traits that I think helps people be successful is to be very clear about your intentions, what you want to accomplish.
Does that mean honesty, or that's just like clarity?
It's you have to let other people know what you're trying to achieve, or you aren't going to get their help to try to achieve it, right? So that was something I learned early on in my career as I sat around kind of wishing, hoping that I was going to achieve the next level, right? I'm going to work hard and I'm going to hope somebody notices it, right? Yeah. There's an element to success of doing that's important, but letting people who can help you get to that next level state outright what your intentions are, there's real power in that. And once I kind of learned that little magic tool, it made a big transformation in my career, where I started to be very open and honest with my boss, with really anyone that I thought could be helpful to me to achieve that next goal. I want to do this. And it's amazing when you state things out loud to yourself, state things out loud to other people, how quickly those things come to fruition. If it's just your own wishful thinking, it doesn't have nearly the power. There's real power in stating what your goals are going to be, and then getting people around you to help achieve those goals. People do want to help you, but you have to be clear about what your intentions are. Another trait to success, I think, is just putting a little extra effort into it. It's amazing how little extra effort that you have to put into things to distinguish yourself from the next guy. A lot of folks kind of do the bare minimum in life, to survive at the job, to survive at the thing they're going through. If you just turn that around a little bit and make a little extra effort, it's amazing how much that little extra effort can do for you in terms of your career.
So that's just doing more than you're asked to do?
It's doing more than you're asked to do. And one thing that can help you to do that, I guess this would be my next tip, is it's great to love what you do, right? To have passion about what you're doing. Mm-hmm. That can have a big influence in your success. But what's amazing is you can learn to love to do almost anything. It's a mindset thing where you decide, I'm going to love this. Here's all the good things about it, and kind of talk yourself into it, and do whatever it takes to do that. Maybe list out all the positive things about the thing that you're doing, so that you have a sort of on paper exactly what's good about it. But being positive and learning to love the thing that you're doing makes you passionate about it, and then that has its own return and makes you successful. I do think a lot of people spend their lives kind of going around with their shoulders slumped, woe is me, and that doesn't lead to success. It doesn't lead to positive things. So if you can just lift yourself up and learn to love whatever the thing, all work has great value, all work has positive things about it, and I think a lot of life is finding the positive side of what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I remember you telling me that years ago when I worked at Chick-fil-A just to save up money and stuff, but I remember you said, just learn to love what you do. And that just makes you, smile more, and it's optimism, like you're saying, focusing on those good things. And it's so much easier to go throughout the workday when you look for things to look forward to.
Yes.
I like to have a busy day, and then, whatever I'm doing, just be looking forward to the next thing, and then you're just enjoying the process, and you have stuff to look forward to.
Yeah, that kind of positivity has real power.
For sure. And earlier, when you talked about clear goals, be clear about what you want, I think that's true in so many different situations. For example, if you have a business, from the business perspective, having a niche is important, and I think also something you're passionate about, like you're saying, be clear about, for me, as a DJ, be clear about the events that I want to do, mm-hmm. that I also know I'm going to do a good job at. Mm-hmm. So this year I've kind of done that, where I like Sweet 16s and events with younger people more, because I understand the music better and it's more fun for me. Mm-hmm. And weddings are great. I've done weddings, continue to do weddings, but it's not my niche, not my focus. And as I've had that clarity and goals, other DJs and other people who I work with help me with that, just like you were saying too. Yeah. They know, hey, this guy, this is what he's great at. We'll help him, maybe refer business to him for that. And then people just hear that. And, referral business is so powerful. When you're doing Sweet 16s, people there are going to want you to do their Sweet 16. It's kind of that snowball effect.
Yeah, well, you're hit on two key things in business. One is, to distinguish a business, you basically have two things you can do, right? There's two ways you can distinguish yourself. One is your cost. You're lower cost than everybody else, right? Sort of the Walmart way of doing business. Yeah. And the other thing is you have some kind of specialized niche that you fill that others don't fill as well as you do, right? And then you can charge a premium for that. Right. So that's absolutely true. I mean, anybody who's going into business needs to understand those two things. That out there in the competitive market, there's two things that are going to distinguish yourself. One is lower price or some kind of specialization that you can offer. The other thing that you hit on is really key to the business that I'm in, which is the referral. So the company that I work for currently is called Workday, and the founder CEO I'm a huge fan of his. He's a great hero to me. He has started numerous businesses throughout his career. He's been super successful in those. And he implements at all the companies that I've been associated, I've worked for him twice, essentially the same set of core values for the company. And the top core value that he has is the employee, right? So he puts a huge emphasis on employee satisfaction. And his idea is that if employees are happy, satisfied, they're going to be productive, and they're going to deliver great product, which is going to make the customers happy, right? And then that leads to his second core value, which is customers, right?
Yeah.
Customer satisfaction, customer happiness. And in the business that I'm in, that's super important. We have, a great sales force. They go out and they sell our software and respond to requests for proposal all over the place. But the salespeople are second in selling our product to our referenceable customers. The happy customer, if you have a happy customer that you can send a prospect to and say, how was your experience with their product? How was your experience with their organization? And they're given big thumbs up, big smile. The deal's done. You've won already. I mean, you can go in and do all the demos you want, make all the promises you want, cut the price however much you want. But if you have happy, successful, referenceable customers, you are unstoppable in business. And that's absolutely a lesson learned from my career.
Yeah, totally. And we were talking the other day, but with the referral, the customers that are going to gladly refer you, that takes time. So that comes, a lot of entrepreneurs think they can become successful overnight or in just 1 year, but sometimes that takes time. And as you are really focusing on the customer, focusing on them, what they want, and do a quality job, those referrals are going to come, and over time you're going to have a good brand, which is what brand is.
Yeah. I mean, life is a lot about patience too, right? You have to build that into your formula for success. Overnight success, I don't know too many of those. The successes that I know are people who honestly put years into building their businesses or building their own skill set, and executing on these principles that you're talking about in your podcast over time, which include setbacks, right? Things are going to happen along the way that aren't going to go your way, and you're going to have to learn from those and then turn that into a positive experience and build on that. So for sure, patience is a big part of it.
Yeah, that's another good point you brought up, that there's a lot of stuff that's not in your control. There's a little stuff there's a few things that are in your control, and those are your attitude, like we talked about.
That's right.
Your work ethic, how much work do you put in?
Yeah.
I mean, those are the two main ones.
Yeah.
What you're able to do, and everything else that happens is a factor, but is not able to affect what you can do.
Yeah. But the good news is that somebody who does exercise positive action on those things that you just mentioned is successful over time.
And this is why I was so excited to have you on, because we're always on the same page.
Yeah.
Just bouncing off of each other.
That's true.
Back to the clarity with your goals. It's so interesting that the top two core values of Workday that Dave Duffield put in is employees and then customers.
Yeah.
Notice neither of those are CEO, like focusing on yourself. It's so important to focus on others, and by doing that, that's the best way to benefit yourself in that long run. But yeah, as an executives out there, or small business owners, it's so important to, I think, focus on what's important to your employees, the people who work for you. You really work for them. And it's so different. Not everyone's motivated just by money. In fact, usually that's not the main motivator. Sometimes it is, but other people are motivated. For me, I'm really motivated by having a project, like I was saying earlier, like unreasonable goals to be able to work with, and then also the people I'm surrounded with. I love awesome people. And then someone else might like good gifts once in a while. Like maybe they're a big, Lakers fan, and you give them tickets, once every 6 months just as a surprise. And then that, you care about them, what's important to them.
Yeah.
Or someone like you maybe wants growth in the company, be able to have these cool opportunities. It's not the same for everyone, but as you focus on your employees, they're going to want to stick around and do an awesome job.
Yeah. Dave is a big proponent. I'm trying to remember the first name of the fellow, but there's a Stanford professor by the last name of Collins who wrote some business books back in the late 80s, early 90s, I think was the time frame. One was called Built to Last, and the other was called, it'll come to me here in a minute, but for Good to Great and Built to Last were the two books.
Okay.
And they're essentially required reading if you're going to work for Dave. Yeah, he encourages everybody that works at his companies to read those books. And they went out and evaluated all of these companies. They basically did an academic investigation of what helped make them successful, right? And the formula, or one of the key parts of the formula, is what you're talking about here, and that is making sure that you've got the right people on board even before you decide what you're going to do. Before you decide what your business is going to be about, you need to make sure that you've got the right people engaged.
Interesting.
When Dave and Anil, who are the founders of the company that I'm working for right now, came up kind of with this concept of this company that they were going to start, one of the things that they decided is that they would be personally involved in hiring the first 500 people. So the first 500 people that were hired at their new organization were interviewed personally by Anil and Dave to make sure that they had the right core of people that understood these core values that they think are so important to their success,
Right.
before they really even got into, launching what the big business was going to be. So that was one of the key principles that comes out of that Collins book, and I think there's a lot of truth to that, right? Having people who've kind of all drunk the same Kool-Aid, who are kind of all on the same page of what we're trying to achieve, regardless of what the business is super important.
Can you talk a little bit more about why that's so important? If you didn't have the right people, how would that be different than a successful business that lasts?
I think the difference is if everyone is working in the same direction, essentially believes in the same set of core values, then anything and everything is possible. But if people have different ideas about what's important for the business, or are selfish in terms of what they're trying to achieve there, then your chances of success are diminished. Yeah. So just having everyone kind of the same philosophy. So an interesting thing that's happened with the business that I'm in, or that they're doing at Workday, which I think is really important, is they basically said, bring all the right people onto the bus, right? So that we're all moving in the same direction.
Right.
But you can become a victim of your own success, right? Because the company now has expanded significantly. I'm guessing there's probably something like 12,000 employees there now.
Wow.
But with that now, you have a much more distributed management, right? Management is something along the lines of 600 managers, I would imagine, at Workday. For them to be successful, all of those 600 managers have to have that same mindset, right? Or they're going to have some aspect of the company that's not on the same page, moving in the same direction. So they make a huge investment. They fly every manager worldwide, the company's big now, they fly every manager to a 3-day seminar in California, and they talk strictly about core values to those managers, and they do it every single year.
Wow.
So they are making a huge investment in keeping everybody at the management level on the same page in terms of what are our core values, what's important for us to do, and that's beyond business strategy, that's beyond, the tactical of what's happening day to day. This is strictly philosophical reason of why we're in business and how we do business. And they re-educate the population, their management staff, over and over and over again to those same principles.
Yeah, I mean, talk about culture. That's how you do it right there. Right?
Yeah, that is how you do it. And you can talk about culture, but making a real investment like that over and over again shows they care about culture. And it makes a difference. From my experience, I've worked for Dave in 2 different companies over the years, and from my experience, there is no better culture than the Workday culture.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. What's the third core value? Is there 3?
You're going to put me on the spot here, but they have other core values, like innovation is really important at Workday, and we put it in all of our annual goals that part of what we're doing is to be innovative, so that we're driving new ideas into the product that are going to do things better, smarter, take advantage of new technologies. Profitability is important. So every person that works at Workday is part of the profitability equation. All of us have the opportunity to save money for the company. All of us can contribute ideas on how we can improve our profitability. So that's an important core concept. Fun is important.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's a core value at Workday. It was a core value at the company I worked at before with Dave. And they really live by that. They have enormous amounts of fun. one of the big things that we do in my organization is our Halloween celebration, and we spend real dollars to into a super fun event every year that's around Halloween. So, and a lot of the people that work at Workday work there because it is so much fun. So that's a key value, and also ties into the top one, which is, you know, employee satisfaction.
Right.
I really should know all of these off the top of my head. Hopefully this won't get back to Workday, but
It's going to. So, but innovation, so what that made me think of is failure, right? Like these mistakes. What at Workday, or ideally, what should happen when an employee, or you know something isn't working and a mistake has been made? How do you learn from that? What do you do with it to improve? Because right, mistakes are opportunities, right?
yeah. So I think you have to have a culture around which allows failure, right?
Yeah.
Where you know that if you try something new and it doesn't work out, that it's going to be viewed as, hey, we're trying something new here. I had an experience actually very early in my career, which was at the first company that I was working for Dave, which taught me a valuable lesson. So I was in support back then, and we had a customer that had an incredibly difficult situation. They had locked themselves out of their own system. They had corrupted their password to their mainframe, and they couldn't get in. And so it was very urgent that they be able to get in there. They had called the support line. I was the one that was helping them, and I was very new in the organization. So I did some research on how you solve this problem, and it was essentially you had to run a script on the back end of the mainframe to be able to unlock it, right? It was a server. And so I gave the person the solution, and they went and ran the script that I gave them. As it turns out, the script that I gave them wasn't for the platform that they were running. I didn't know the difference. I didn't know that the script was different for these different platforms. So they ran that script, and it essentially corrupted their ability to be able to get into their own system. So now they were truly locked out. There was no way to solve it. And it ended up being pretty expensive for them. So what they had to do is they had to restore from a backup system that they had. And when they did that, they lost, I can't remember what it was. It was, I think, a couple of days worth of transactions. So this was a big corporation that had 24 hours, 48 hours worth of transactions that essentially they could not get to. Their backup was old enough that they missed out on those. They were furious. And they were furious at the company that I was working for. They were furious at me.
Wait, who's that?
It was a big deal. The client,
the client
that I was helping.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And so, you know, my boss came to me. It was absolutely a fireable offense. You know, I had caused the problem. I had caused these guys to lose out on 2 days worth of transactions that they were going to have to try to recreate. It was going to cost them real money to solve these problems, real resources. And so my boss came and talked to me, and he said something to me that, you know, really stuck with me for the rest of my career. He said, we would never penalize somebody at this company who was trying to do the right thing and made a mistake. You know, because I wasn't being malicious. I was honestly trying to help the customer. I lacked some knowledge, some critical knowledge that I needed to be able to help them. And the mistake that I had made was a big one. It was something that had cost us some goodwill with the customer, etc. But they didn't penalize me whatsoever. They never held that against me. My boss told me just very frankly, we would never penalize somebody for trying to do the right thing at this company, which I was trying to do. And you know, I've kind of carried that same thing with me throughout the rest of my career, that people who've worked for me, and I've been in charge of big organizations, you know, anybody that's trying to do something good that ends up being bad, you would never penalize them for that. So I think there's got to be a cultural mindset around that that allows for innovation, because innovation means trying new things, right?
Yeah.
And trying new things means you're going to have failures. Some things aren't going to work out.
Absolutely.
And but you're also not going to get the payoff if you don't try new things that comes from being innovative, which I think helps drive business forward. If you're not doing that, then you're not going to succeed.
Absolutely. When you were at the company and you realized you made this mistake, was the culture that where you felt comfortable, being honest about your mistake? You probably were going to be honest anyway, but how comfortable did you feel, and how much of that do you think was because of the culture that was there?
Well, it wasn't really a case of that. The fact that I had made the mistake was immediately known.
Okay. It wasn't like
Yeah.
you couldn't tell anyone.
No, they came back, and said, "Hey, we did what you told us to do, and we're screwed now." So there was nothing to hide. It was well known that I had made the mistake. And I was very new in the organization there. I'd been there less than a year, and so I was learning a valuable lesson from them, which is it's okay for you to make mistakes here. They taught me that. So, and that was super valuable. It made me a much more valuable employee. I was super loyal to them after that, right? I realized these guys have my back. They're not out to get me, they're out to help me. And, in return, I want to do the same, right? So it really increased my loyalty significantly. And I mean, I could detail out what my career path has been for you, but essentially, I've stayed with these guys for 30 years, right? And it was year one that they showed that they were loyal to me, and I've been able to show I'm loyal to them, by working for them for 30 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You have some experience in public speaking, and you took some opportunities to do that within your company too. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that, and then also if you could give us kind of the basics and tips of how to be a really engaging and effective speaker.
Yeah, sure. So public speaking has great value. It increases your profile. So if you're able to get over, the fear that a lot of people have of getting up in front of an audience, you can distinguish yourself in your career. A lot of people avoid that opportunity because they have a natural fear of, not wanting to embarrass themselves or look like a fool in front of
it's like the
people.
second fear behind death.
Yeah, you hear those kinds of things. But it plays out, right? Like I've had lots of people who've worked for me over the years who, we have a need to send somebody to a conference to represent us to do this or that. And a lot of people decline, and it's just, they don't feel comfortable doing that. But if you're willing to put yourself out in front of people and learn some skills around public speaking, you can distinguish yourself, and I do think it can make a difference for you. It's a way to market yourself a little bit.
Totally.
So, I've done a lot of public speaking, and I think public speaking really comes down to one thing: preparation. If you're willing to put in the time to make sure that your content is solid and that you know your content and that you can, speak to it comfortably, you will be a successful public speaker. It really comes down to only that. There's lots of good trainings out there that talk about public speaking and how you should conduct yourself, when you're standing in front of a crowd, and how to, properly do it behind, on a podium, where you walk around, or behind a lectern. There's different tips on how you can do that kind of stuff. There's lots of theatrical type things that you can learn to be a good public speaker, and all of those are helpful, but I really think the number one thing you can do is be prepared.
Yeah.
When I was at the previous company, one of the trainings I went to said something like, for every minute that you're going to be in front of an audience, you should have at least an hour of preparation. So that might seem kind of extreme, but if you're talking to 1,000 people, you really need to know what you're talking about. To be able to project the confidence so that they can buy the message that you're giving. If you're up there doing ums and ahs and not quite sure where you're going and looking at your notes and kind of unengaged, or don't have good content, something that's relevant, something that's important for people to hear, you're going to lose that audience and your time is not well spent. So
yeah, there's a quote that I love by Mark Twain, and it says, "Give me an hour and I'll speak for a minute. Give me a minute and I'll speak for an hour."
Yeah,
Right.
that's right. There's another tip, and I told you guys this in my presentation, the big secret to public speaking, which a lot of people don't know, but I think is really true. You should record yourself.
Video specifically?
You should video yourself. And a lot of people don't want to do that because they think it's cringeworthy to see themselves speak.
It's amazing how many people will not do that.
Yeah.
The vast majority of people will not do that.
Because they just don't want themselves. But the reality is, if you find yourself cringeworthy public speaking, guess what? your audience very likely also finds you cringeworthy.
Right.
So you need to have the confidence to stand up there and say, look, I look engaging. The things I'm saying are interesting. The way I'm presenting myself is in a positive way. And videotaping yourself doing it and practicing it over and over will transform the type of public speaker you are. 100%.
I guess there's a lot of different settings in speaking that can mean a lot of different things, but you say preparation, which is super important. But how much of it do you think you can improvise or throw little things in there that's based on what's actually going on or what someone else said?
Well, that's a skill set that you build from practice, right? There's probably people that have natural talent that have the ability to, do some impromptu type speaking and have success at that. But like with anything in life, everything takes practice. And the more time that you put into it, the more opportunities you have to do it, the better you're going to be at it. So I think for the average person, preparation is number one, and then actually doing it and having opportunities to do it, creating opportunities for yourself to do it, is going to strengthen that skill set. It's like anything else.
Totally. And I like how you said, just take the opportunity. Like when you get an opportunity, take it. And that's something I've been good at that's really blessed me, is that when I've had a lot of opportunities, I had the awareness to say, yes, I'll say yes to this. I do not feel comfortable. I feel nervous. I'm going to have to prepare for it, but say yes to it for the opportunity. And I've done that with so many things, and not just speaking, but when you say yes to all the opportunities you're capable of, accepting, that builds your experience so much. And although it's uncomfortable, you might be nervous, you might think you won't do a good job. It goes back to innovation, being willing to fail, look embarrassed, to do better, and these things will build, and from there you'll get even more opportunities. Yeah, for sure. You got to take the chances that are in front of you, and a lot of times you create the chances that happen for you. You volunteer. I want to do that just for the experience of doing it. We talked about being a leader and having a good team, so I think we really touched on all those things. I wanted to ask you, so what are some mistakes you've, once again, either noticed or from your own experience in life, and specifically in a career or business, do you think are really avoidable that people should be aware of? And like looking back, maybe if you're going to tell your 25-year-old self, what do you wish you did? What are some of those mistakes that you think are really avoidable and you just wish someone told you, or you wish you could tell more people you need to avoid this? This is a big mistake.
Okay, this might be a little off of the topic, but I do think it's valuable advice. One thing that I've learned in terms of advancing your career over time is that you can probably only go so far at a particular company. That you do need to be open to the idea of changing jobs and changing companies if you really want to climb. And there's a reason for that. If you're hired at a particular company and you're doing a good job for them, they could give you certain advancement opportunities over time. But the reality is they already have your services, right? They don't need to do much to probably keep you around. And so most people who are working at a company, will get, 3 to 5%, 7% salary increase over time, promotion opportunities over time. But if you want to accelerate that process, you have to be willing to jump ship and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
There was an article that I saw that was posted, I think it was on Monster, that I actually copied down to my phone. This was probably 10, 15 years ago, which detailed out statistics that were along those lines. People who stay at the same company have salary increases, to this rate. People who are willing to move around for bigger opportunities can grow their income much more quickly. Because the company is trying, when they're bringing in new people, they attract that talent with money, right? That's how they get the talent to come in. They don't need to do that for the people that are already working there. And so you have to be willing to go put yourself out there. And there is no better time in life to get a job than when you have a job. If you wait, to go get the new big opportunity after you've been fired or, let go or whatever, you you're not as strong as negotiating position as you are when you're coming from.
You're desperate, right?
Yeah, you're desperate, right? So you're kind of willing to take anything. But if you are willing, and I think everyone should be doing this, I think you should, just for the fact of keeping your resume up to date. And understanding what's important to have on the resume. You should be periodically taking some of your own time to explore what other job opportunities are out there, actively look at those. Just that exercise itself is helpful. And then apply for some of those positions that you think you're interested in. Keep that interview skill set up, and keep your pulse on what's happening in the market. I think that's really important for job advancement. So I think if I was going to tell my 25-year-old self how to be successful, one thing would be to do that.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a few things that are interesting about that. One, when you think about negotiation, they say, the person who wins the negotiation, the person who cares less, right? You're safe when you have a job.
That's right.
You're probably comfortable, and when you're interviewing for a different job for a company, you can also tell them, I'm currently employed over here.
Of course.
Doing great, but I'm actually interested in your company. This is how much I'm interested. I already have a job.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great quote, Charlie. You want to be in a position where you can walk away from whatever offer they give, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can do it comfortably because you've got a job to do. Yeah, 100%.
That's probably a good quote for other things too. I think that goes into relationships as well. Back to being desperate. Being desperate can be unattractive to employers, to potential spouse, girlfriend, whatever. Right. When you have a sense of independence of, I've got my own life. Yeah. I'm living great. I'm happy. I'm fulfilled. I've got amazing things I'm involved in. It's more attractive, actually. It's kind of ironic, but it's true.
I think you're onto something there. That is true. So, Charlie, can I go ahead and ask myself a question?
Yeah, what is that question?
Well, there's a topic that I want to talk about.
Maybe whisper it to me and I'll ask it to you.
So, like I told you at the beginning of this podcast, my career has been higher education related. I am a strong believer in higher education. Yeah. And I've noticed that some of the podcasts that you've done are kind of around the idea of you don't really need an education to be successful.
But not college. I think everyone is advocate of education. So you're talking about college, though.
College, but I am talking specifically about college education. And I do think there is huge value in college education. And I came with a couple of statistics along those lines.
Okay.
So there's a book that I've been reading recently that was written by Paul Tuff called The Years That Matter Most. And it's talking about college. Mm-hmm. And it's not really specifically about the value of college education. It has a broader theme than that. But there's a lot of information within that book that I think that ties into my own personal belief about college education, and also provides some statistical evidence on it. So I think that college education is super valuable, not only for your career progression, but also just for building a well-rounded person, which is going to be a person who's going to be able to be a contributor to society, right? I mean, we live in a democracy, and we have to have an educated populace for our democracy to work. If our democracy is undereducated, they don't understand their own government system, and they can't make good choices when choices are put in front of them, then our democracy is damaged. And college provides that. College provides more opportunities to learn about how the world works, deeper understanding of science, deeper understanding of critical thinking, and those things are very important for our society to work. And so I'm a big advocate that we grow as a society in terms of our education. The other thing that college education does is it exposes you to things, thoughts, concepts that you probably wouldn't naturally investigate on your own, right?
Yeah.
So my career was in business. But I, as an undergraduate, had to take a lot of stuff as general education, which exposed me to things that I wouldn't have learned about. One would be the humanities. I loved my humanities classes. I super enjoyed listening to people who had spent their lives thinking about the meaning of art, thinking about the meaning of music, and teaching me how to appreciate those things on a much better level. That enriches your life. Work is work. but your life is something else. And, sort of living an examined life, a life that understands concepts that are sort of important to your humanity, I think is highly important. And that's some of the things that college does for you. But if we are talking strictly about careers here, college also improves your chances significantly to do well economically in your life. In that book, Paul Tuff wrote, The Years That Matter Most, he points out that students who go to super elite colleges, and so that would be Yale, Stanford, Harvard, Princeton, Cornell, that level of school, have about a 1 in 4 chance of making $600,000 10 years out of school. If you go...
Which is a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, $600,000 a year. You can do okay on that. You have to learn how to spend your money right, but you can do okay on that. The chances of someone who has a community college education is about 1 in 1,000 of making that.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
So, and there's a grade that goes in between those levels of education, right? So the super elites, 1 in 4, and then you come down to, maybe lower level than that, like premier privates like Davidson or Northwestern, something like that. They're not 1 in 4, but they're 1 in 10. I don't remember the exact statistics on that, but there's a graduated scale that heads down. So if you just look at it statistically, the more education and the more premier your education is, the better chance you have. Now, it's not a guarantee. You have to take that skill set, you've got to apply it into the market, you've got to be smart about it, but the reality is higher education pays. There's no question about it. There has been a lot of talk that I've seen, in popular media that kind of undervalues higher education. This sort of, and a lot of it is focused, I think, on bad choices in education, where people do a lot of borrowing to be able to, and I am absolutely not advocating for that, or they make choices in what they're getting educated in without really thinking about the marketability of those skills, right? And so, yes, sure. You can make mistakes with higher education. Higher education can be very expensive, but if you're strategic about it and you're smart about it, there's an absolute payoff to higher education, and frankly, the statistics show that the more education that you get, the better off you're going to be economically long term. So I just wanted to throw that out there before all of these other guys that you get in here talk about, try to sell you on the fact that, oh, you don't need any of that stuff and you're going to be fine. Go out and get yourself a welding degree, which, by the way, is higher education. You don't learn how to weld in high school.
Right.
Not marketable welding. You have to go get higher education. But then when you look at the payoff for that, I know they have these outrageous claims that people can make $150,000 a year being a welder, but the reality is most welders make, 15 to 20 bucks an hour, which translates to 35,000 a year. That's the reality. So higher education leads to higher opportunity.
Awesome. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. And, they've already been here, already made the video, so I'll have to edit your perspective in there too, okay, to get the contrast there. But, college isn't bad. College is great, and I think I'm glad you said you got to be strategic about it, about, once again, what do you want to get out of it, what are your goals, and, going to a prestigious university helps you make more money, and it may be in the case where when other people are looking at you, like your resume, but also it's just better education, right? And you were telling me about what are some other benefits of those top schools. For example, you really don't need to go into debt to go to Harvard, which was a big misconception I've heard. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so there's this is something I know quite a bit about, and it's basically the strategies around paying for college. Most people that go to super elites do not end up paying for their education. There could be exceptions to that, but most people who go to college, to those super elites, those schools have lots of money. They have big endowments, and they're able to provide significant amounts of financial aid. Some of them even have promises that if you get admitted to their school, you will not leave with any loan debt whatsoever. Their endowments just are that big. So they will evaluate your income, they'll figure out exactly how much you can pay, and they will cover the difference, and you do not have to borrow to go to those schools. So that's great. That's great for the kid who is super academic and can do really good on the entry exams, SAT, ACT. They should target themselves to go to those schools 100%. But the average kid who's coming out of school is not going to have the credentials to be able to get into Harvard, to get into Stanford. But there are paths in higher education that don't have to be expensive that will allow you to get quality degrees and quality education. I recommend to my own kids that the path that they should take is they should go to community college and do their first 2 years there. Community college is super affordable, and they've got great education that go on at community college, and it's essentially free. I mean, it's very close to free in terms of cost. Yeah. So you go those first 2 years, you have 2 years of your higher education degree, you shouldn't have had to borrow for any of that. Right. Then if you do well, and you should do well, you should be focused on it, you can transfer to an institution that has more prestige, but it doesn't have to be an expensive one. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we have great schools that are super affordable for members of the church, and I highly recommend all members of our church to go to those schools and take advantage of that. And then a very important key is to do well. Do well when you're at school. Make the effort to get good grades. And it doesn't take much. You don't have to be a genius. It's just really putting in the effort to do it. Then you take those good grades and you go to quality graduate school. And if you've done well and you've done well on that path, you should be able to get into quality. And then I think it's fine to borrow, because there is a direct tie between most professional degrees and an income level. And so you can make a return on investment decision. You can specifically look and say, if I get this degree, I should be able to make this amount of money. And I do think that borrowing, if you need to at that point, makes sense, because the payoff is, almost, you can see the immediate turnaround to that. So to me, that's a super smart way about getting a college education. You aren't going to be going into debt that isn't repayable, and you're going to have very marketable skills in the market.
Right, I think a lot of people view it as a liability, but in a lot of ways it's one of the best investments you can make, and it is absolutely going to pay you.
It's going to pay you. It's going to teach you how to be a critical thinker. It's going to teach you how to learn. It's going to teach, which is probably the most important thing that you can learn to do. And all of these other guys that you've been talking about that have been successful, that's what they've learned in their life, is they know how to learn, right? Yep. So every opportunity that they get into, they know how to go learn all of the parameters around that opportunity to make themselves successful. And college should be teaching you that. It teaches you how to learn. The specifics of what you learn there are probably not nearly as important as the capability of knowing how to learn throughout the rest of your life and take that learning and apply it to what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, and threw your perspective out there. I totally agree with you on most of that.
Well, sorry for making my own topic, but I'm passionate about it, so I want to talk about it.
I appreciate it. And Dave Campbell, right?
Yeah.
So he's a federal judge, and he's also a member of our church. Super successful guy, super smart guy. You're super smart too, by the way, which is awesome. I'm so glad you're here. But so he went to a lot of college, but one of the things he told me that really stood out to me is where I went to college was not nearly as important as how I went to college.
Yeah.
That's right along the lines of what you're saying. It's really about how you apply yourself, what you do with what's available, what's there.
Great advice.
I don't know if I said this, but I'm glad you talked about going to college for also the reason that life isn't all about your work and your career and your business. That'd be kind of dumb and pointless if it was. Like, you just keep on working, and then zero of the dollars you made when you die and go with you. So
right. You should be taking something else out of the experience.
So you're buried next to the fat guy, you're buried next to the poor guy.
Yeah, you're all pretty much the same at that point.
Right. But there's a lot to appreciate out of life, and a well-rounded life is awesome. And that looks different for different people, but that's something to definitely be aware of. Last thing I wanted to kind of ask you, we mentioned it earlier, but what would you tell your teenage self looking back?
So as a teenager, maybe I was a little bit of a strange teenager, but a lot of my focus when I was your age, and maybe you're kind of the same mindset, is I was very focused on my own success. I was also very kind of locked into a particular political philosophy, and I was very engaged in that kind of thing. It was the era of Ron Reagan, and my own mother made a joke about me in her journal. She says something along the lines of that Ken desperately wishes that Ron Reagan wasn't such a liberal.
That's funny.
So if that gives you an idea of kind of where I was. And I was also very success and money focused. When I was a teenager, I actually had to pay a guy $10 so that he would go make trades on the stock market for me because he was 18 and my parents wouldn't do it for me. So, my focus was very much around all of those things. But I think as time has gone by, I've learned that life is a lot more than that. A lot more than just being financially successful, business successful. That life is really a lot about the relationships that you make with people, and the sacrifices that you make for other people that can help change their lives. So I think if I was going to inject some wisdom in my teenage self, it would be to focus more on those things. That yes, those things are important. That you want to be successful in life and you want to have some good financial results in life, but it's really not what life is about. Those things are just means and opportunities to be able to help other people, to create opportunities for other people around you. And so I think I would suggest being more outward focused than I was. It's probably common for teenagers to be inward focused anyway.
Which isn't always bad either, right?
It's not. But and yeah, you can't lift somebody else up if you're not already on solid higher ground, right? So getting yourself set up is important, but probably not as important as then what you do with that once you're in a good position.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I'm a huge believer in that. Focus on what's important. Help the people around you. And would you agree that you should ask yourself, how would I feel if this was my last day on earth? What do I want people to say at my funeral? How did I change the world? Whose lives did I bless, make better, right? Yeah,
I do think there's some truth to that. I did like reading obituaries when I was younger. Kind of.
He was a weird teenager, you're right.
Getting a sense of what people did with their lives. And yeah, you always put yourself in that position, like, well, what if this were me? What would they say about me? I don't think I am so dramatic as to think like every moment I've got to be, living my greatest moment. A lot of life is just about enjoying yourself and enjoying the people around you, and that's part of life too. So I'm not so focused that every minute of the day I have to be thinking about my future success or what's going to be on my resume when I die. But you certainly want to do good things that you can look back on and be proud of.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah,
it was
thanks,
awesome
Charlie.
to talk to you.
It's a pleasure to do it, and an honor to be on someone who's going to have such great success in their life.
Thanks so much. So looking back, I just wanted to kind of talk about some things we talked about and what we can take action on, because none of this really matters if you don't take action on it. Would you agree?
True.
So if you are an employee, focus on your customer, and also maybe jump on line and look for some other jobs, take some interviews, see what other opportunities are out there, because the best time to apply for a job is when you already have one. If you are a business owner or an executive, focus more on your employees. Find out what's important to them. Ask them, or maybe stalk them just a little bit and see what's important to them. And because that's how you're going to build an awesome company, and that's how they're going to, enjoy being at work more. If you haven't gone to college, go ahead and apply. Would you say?
Yeah, college is good.
And then what would you say are some ways, when you say lifelong learning, continue learning, what does that look like? Reading? Talking to people?
Yeah, I'm reading. There's great power in reading great books. You want to get the best ideas that people have taken time to think about and put down on paper and inject them into your own mind.
Totally. And it's amazing that, you know, people who have decades of experience and, you know, failures that they've gone through, you can learn by reading in a matter of minutes, right?
Yeah, go after the best ideas. Populate your mind with that.
Something I thought was amazing, especially with social media, YouTube, podcasts these days, is if you wanted to have lunch with anyone in the world, chances are you can sit at your table having lunch and you can have lunch with them either by reading that book they wrote or that interview they were a part of or podcast they were on or video they're in. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. The greatest thinkers of the world put their thoughts down in books, but they're not doing any good sitting on the shelf. You got to pull them out and read them.
Absolutely. All right, thanks so much, guys. See you next time.
All right, good job, Charlie. You're killing it.